Raise your hand if you are curious. Yeah? Brilliant. I'm in the right room. What's interesting about all of these stories that you may have been listening to throughout the day is that one element has been there throughout, and particularly at the very beginning. You see, many people believe that creativity is based on popping out of the blue. You know, how does creativity become formed? Well, first we need to question what creativity is and how it works. So I'm going to go deep. I'm one of these people who has no degree. Okay, I love that I don't have a degree because I am not held by anyone or any institution, which kind of, in my opinion, gives me an advantage. And throughout my life, I've been questioning the whole time, and I didn't realise I was questioning and questioning and questioning. And what's interesting is that I've come to the conclusion that curiosity is at the basis of every single thing we think, feel, and do. Now, that's a pretty bold statement, but I do actually have quite a lot of evidence to prove this. And interestingly enough, the World Economic Forum have recently determined that curiosity is your greatest metacognitive skill of the 21st century. Let me repeat that, okay? Curiosity is your greatest metacognitive skill of the 21st century. Wow. And yet, it never, ever gets spoken about. You may have heard passion in the talks. You may have heard of mindfulness. But what's really interesting is that curiosity is required if you want to become mindful. Just think about that for a moment. If you're going for a walk and you are walking through, a field and you want to be mindful, then the mechanism that's required is actually curiosity. So, having spent about 5 or 6 years now deconstructing what curiosity is, I believe it is the ignition for wonder. It's the engine of a question. And it is the fuel that fires creativity. So if you want to be more creative, it's about becoming more curious. Raise your hand if you've ever had a creative block. Anyone? Yeah. And I know that one of the gentlemen spoke about, again, mindfulness and taking time to stop. And that's great if you've got the time to stop. But for the majority of people who are really struggling in an extremely fast-paced world, what is one thing that you can actually do? Well, you can ask a question. But here's the thing. You have to ask the right question. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that there's actually a science behind asking a question. So what I'm saying here is that if we were to look at curiosity, first of all, what sparks the question in the first place is a desire. A desire which is an interest to learn, know, explore, feel something. And what that means is that curiosity is actually bridging this gap between where you are and the unknown. And actually, in a world where we currently are faced with extreme unknowing, curiosity is your greatest mechanism that will guide you through any circumstance. In fact, chaos theory experts have now determined that curiosity is your greatest metacognitive skill that will enable you to navigate uncertainty, chaos, the unknown, problems. So what I'm saying here is that it's about thinking differently. And that's what I do. I teach people to think differently. I teach people to think in a way that gets results. Who would like better results? I know I do. Great. The thing is, it's about asking questions with the right intention. Now, so this is a very complicated concept, really. This is connecting the dots of what's going on at any one time when you are creating, okay? I do really try hard to simplify what is essentially an extremely complicated concept, which is creativity. But essentially, we start with what we know, and that's the problem. When we want to create, we want to get out of what we know and into the unknown. And of course, curiosity, as I mentioned, does that. It helps us bridge that gap. It enables us to take that step. And by the way, as you do that, as you are in curiosity with the right intention, you will also improve your health. Do you know why? Because it actually down-regulates your stress levels. Imagine that. Imagine living in a time of complete uncertainty, but you got it, dude, because you're curious. With the right intention, you can navigate uncertainty. And so as you can see here, I'll just very quickly go through the concepts that are involved in just one thought. You have perception at the very top. Now that's a very wobbly concept, perception, because again, it's based on old information. It's based on what you think you know, based on experience. And of course, as we know, sometimes your perception cannot always be correct. Then you've got desires and objectives. Now, desires is a really fundamental mechanism that allows you to move forward. It drives you. And sometimes we need an objective, but not always. So just bear that in mind, and I'll come back to that because, well, actually, I'll deal with that now. Somebody mentioned about the concept of not having an objective. The reason why that works really, really well, and I know people talk about goals, but what's really interesting about curiosity is that when you are in curiosity, and you have an intention, you don't necessarily need a goal. So what do I mean by that? Just so I can clarify. An intention being that you want to do something, okay? That's an intention. The question is, which way are you facing? Because the other problem with this concept is that your brain at any one time is going through all of this at any one time. By the way, this is not a linear process, it's quantum. It happens within the blink of an eye. As you're going through all this information at any one time, you are also evaluating risk over reward. And usually the brain favours risk, particularly as you get older. As you're younger, it's reward. And that's why kids are so open to play. And that's why they learn so quickly. And so if you're focused on the risk, what happens is you will actually reduce your cognitive functioning. You will reduce also what information flows into your mind. And if you are a creator, that's not a particularly positive way to start your day. So, my advice is to very much get into reward every single day. What is the reward? Because the reward is what will drive you towards what it is that you're trying to achieve. And so I call it the great unfolding. That's the difference between seeking and finding. Seeking is when you have an objective. There's nothing wrong with that. But you try and keep it to a loose objective rather than a firm objective. And the reason why is because when you're finding, you open up more possibilities. Now, when you're a creator, of course, you want to have more possibilities, don't you? Yes or no? Yep. I know I do. So when you're thinking, the biggest question you really want to be asking is, which way am I facing? Am I facing into risk? Now, risk, by the way, is what I call probability thinking. Probability thinking being that it only evaluates what you think you know and capable of. This is the difference between potential and potentiality, by the way. If you look it up, potential. So if I was to say to you, my potential is to do this is what I think I know. Potentiality is everything else. Big difference. So we want to get you into potentiality, not potential. We want to get you into possibility rather than probability. Probability is, statistical analysis and so forth. And then we move to interests and inspirations, and that is again going to be a massive driver for you. Predicted advancements, that's a really interesting thing now more than ever, and I think loads of people are really concerned about AI. My concern, as somebody who looks at metacognitive functioning, we will lose the battle because we are weakening the muscle of thinking. And it's already happening now. Cultures and values, that's really important. Amazing how much we sort of hold to our cultures and values. So creation really is interest, if you like, to express something. That's essentially what it is. And curiosity is part of that process, because curiosity is the desire to know, learn, think, explore something, to bridge that gap. So you can't have creativity without curiosity. So if you want to be more creative, it's about becoming more curious. It's about asking better questions, the kind of questions that are going to get you from where you are to where you want to be. So in the equation of a question, because the question arises after the desire, that's the interesting thing. Now, people think, when I speak about curiosity, they all say, oh yeah, I ask really good questions. But that's not what curiosity is. There's 3 parts to curiosity. One is the desire, right? That's what I call the ignition. The second part, then the desire forms the question itself. And then, so that is called the engine. And then that engine, which is formed from the question, then will lead you to take action. Now, a lot of people talk about dopamine in a really bad way, and I think it's a bit unfair to dopamine, really. We're not using dopamine as it was intended. So I look at the function of the human body, how we were designed. And actually, when you start to look at your evolutionary design, you are absolutely designed for greatness. But what stops us every time is fear. And the only way to bridge the gap of fear, the unknown, is through curiosity. It enables you to navigate. It is your compass. In fact, it was Walt Disney said, it's curiosity that keeps driving new paths. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Bravo.